The season of health and wellness is on Cruise Through HTX. And how do you eliminate the stigma and misconceptions surrounding clinical trials? You know, there are myths that participants are treated like lab rats, and there's a fundamental lack of understanding of the rigorous process behind drug development. It's not just something that, I'm going to make a medicine and it's going to hit the market. It's not like that. In fact, to address some of these issues and these myths, I've brought to the show my friend Karim Mohammed. He's the owner of Tranquil Clinical Research in the Clear Lake area. He's going to debunk some of these myths. He, with his business, treats participants with the utmost respect. You're going to learn about the process. You're going to learn exactly how at Tranquil they go beyond basic regulations and aim to provide a welcoming environment for those advancing medicine. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did putting it together for you, please consider sharing and subscribing to the show from my website at cruisethroughhtx.com. And last of all, please talk to your primary care physician before trying anything you hear during any of the episodes on this season of Cruise Through HTX. What is the biggest myth that you would like to debunk when it comes to clinical research?
Wow. There are a lot of myths in clinical research. The biggest one is that a participant that participates is like a lab rat. Someone who, it's a transaction the same way a rat or a mice would be in a lab, where in clinical trial, our number one focus is the person, the participant. We work towards their wellness, their safety, and we protect their rights. So that's the number one. Is in clinical trials, you are not a rat. You're an individual. You're important, and you're treated as such.
And I've seen the facility. There are no human hamster wheels.
None.
It's an amazing. In fact, we're sitting in one of the oversized rooms in which there are snacks, there are ginormous couches. We're at a table where your clinical participants can mingle amongst each other.
Right.
Your office is right there. You can see out, so you come and converse with people.
100%. It's intentional by design, Freddie. I want a place to host our patients, our participants, the people who volunteer to advance medicine and science in a way that's never been done before.
Yeah.
Treat people like they're important. And I think that's where the regulations that we follow internationally to federally, they set forth this principle of protecting the rights and safety and wellness. I want to take it to a level that is unseen.
To exceed the expectations.
100%.
Base level. Because base level is treat a human right.
100%.
But you are going beyond that.
Yeah, because I guess I'd take the approach, how would I want my mom, my brother, my wife to be treated? And that's the philosophy we apply. And in knowing that we come from a place, Freddie, in clinical trials where not too far in our history, we did things that were atrocious.
Oh, yeah.
To participants on study. And I want to remove that. And that's to elevate people and get people who've never been on trial. You have to have something like this, in my opinion, to get them to trust me.
Right. And it's going to take a while, dare I say, maybe even generations to unravel the level of mistrust. And you could point to a number of cases. You could probably even point to something called COVID, a lot of mistrust there. But it all really goes back to the advancement of science and health and longevity for humanity.
If people knew that every drug that's approved has to go through this rigor of science and clinical trials, I think that trust would come back autonomously. But we distrust the process.
Yeah.
And it's because sometimes the process, bad people did bad things and things didn't go accordingly and it failed. And that's where my responsibility in drug development, in clinical trials, and having a research unit is to build that trust with our patients, with the community, and demonstrate that you are a priority. That though I'm working to see if this drug works so we can get it to the place to go to its next iteration or next phase or to the FDA for approval, you're not just subject number 1242.
Right.
You're an individual that I respect, that I'm going to treat so wholeheartedly well. So then we produce wellness in you while we work towards the goal of the study.
What is your favorite study that you have done in recent years, or even since the start of Tranquil clinical research?
We've done some cool stuff. One of my favorite studies was a study where we were working with stroke patients. And when you have a stroke, the brain doesn't like blood and it needs to be evacuated. Not necessarily evacuated, you need to make room. So we take out something called cerebral spinal fluid through a device, and we worked on a smart device where that technology had not changed for over 40, 50 years.
Really?
Yeah, so that's what's kind of crazy is devices, they're pretty simple. It's a mechanical device, but we'd never applied technology or innovation. And so I got to work on a device like that. Another cool one was first kind of a clinical trial where I was in a kind of the corporate setting.
Yeah.
I worked on one of the first drugs to support colorectal cancer in a new class of monoclonal antibodies.
Get out.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to go back to the stroke device, because that's a big one. So many, and colorectal cancer, that's another big one. I do want to go back to strokes because so many people die of stroke, heart attack, whatnot. It's like a killer, legit killer. Why do you think it took so long to come up with something, to even find the interest in creating something like this? Is it because the FDA is that hard to work with?
We don't have a hard time with FDA.
No way.
We don't. I think that's one of the misnomers is that the FDA is a body that's hard or difficult to work with. We haven't experienced that, but the device, it's to that old adage, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Neurosurgery, the teams that worked on these devices, they weren't the best, they weren't the easiest, but it is what we've always used to reduce cerebral spinal fluid in patients who had stroke. I think that's kind of the why. Yeah. And the people who can innovate, those who had those ideas, I think the barrier is cost. It's not the FDA, it's the cost of getting a protocol built. It's the cost of building a prototype or a drug. It's the cost of doing a clinical trial. Yeah. Drug development, device development is very expensive. And I think that's probably the barrier.
And so the approval, I'm sorry to interrupt. So the approval process is not necessarily something that is going to be as inhibitive as somebody would maybe traditionally think.
Yeah, it really is black and white, Freddie. If you want a drug or a device for the first time ever to go into clinical trial, the agency has a formula. They want you and a template. They want you to complete it. Their ask is, why are you doing the study? How are you going to keep people safe? What have you demonstrated previously, whether it's in the preclinical settings, like in animal models or computer models, cell cultures, to demonstrate that it's going to work and it's safe. And then you build a protocol to demonstrate scientific method. Is your drug, is your device safe? Is it going to work for what you say it works for? It's literally that easy. The things that get rejected, it's because the barriers to getting to that place in time where I have a drug, I have a device that I can take into clinic, how much did it cost to get them there? So like that device, Freddie, it took engineering. It took software development. It took regulatory experts. It took a lot of time, effort, and money to get them to the place where Tranquil could then write to the agency and say, we want to do a clinical trial. My part was easy. And the FDA accepted. Okay.
What does the device even look like? It's not a needle, is it?
No, it's a machine that just calibrated, kind of self-calibrated to drain the CSF. Simple kind of technology with smart engineering.
So how is it inserted into the body?
The device itself, the drain itself was the same drain that would have been there with traditional device. All we developed and evaluated was the device that did the draining.
Okay, see, so this is where I know nothing about any of this. So, all right, this is technology that works in conjunction with the drain.
With existing technology.
With existing technology. So the drain, which would, I guess, be somewhere in
it's in the brain.
In the brain.
It's in the brain. It's
literal brain drain.
Yeah, they literally like drill a hole to allow cerebral spinal fluid to be evacuated.
Got it now. Okay. How lucky are we? Just how lucky?
Where we are with science, Freddie, we work on clinical trials that I wouldn't have met in any point in time 20 years ago have thought that we are where we are now. Science has produced so many phenomenal developments that we're literally rocket launching developments that I think we're, the rate of discovery, where we can produce the things that we're producing, the science we're producing now, I can't imagine what it's going to be like in 5 or 10 years.
It's funny you say that. And before we started talking on camera, I was telling you about Peter Diamandis and his podcast Moonshot. And he was talking about the future and why it's so bright and why it's important to have a mindset of abundance. And he talked about how future developments are going to accelerate over the next decade more than they ever have in the past century. And I am here for it.
And I'll testify to that because we see it. We see how fast the science moves and how quickly we learn.
Yeah.
Because we share information better, because we use machine learning, because we use AI, because we have better scientific methodologies. Our science is developing and moving at a rate that I don't think most people could ever expect.
Wow. And you don't really see any of this stuff because it's a lot easier to cover people hating on one another and crime.
I think that's the people who see it are those who have to look because you won't find it otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it is something. So I want to back up a little bit to how you and your wife, Ronnie, had even come to start this. Now, y'all were EMTs?
Yes. We met during EMT school.
EMT school.
Yeah, when I was 18.
So what gave you both the idea to take on something like this? Was it seeing something when you were out in the field as a paramedic?
No.
What gave you that idea?
I think it's the love of, I guess you have to have an innate care, that nurture, that I want to benefit people. I want to do something that helps others. Ronnie has it. I have it. We wanted to develop a company that is different by design because I worked in the corporate center. Mm-hmm. Ronnie worked with corporate hospitals. Mm-hmm. And we kept seeing over and over that sometimes what's important isn't the patient, isn't the process, isn't the drug. There's another reason. I want to take that other reason out and really do drug development a very specific way and intentionally. And it's not hard. It's just, I think it goes back to the why. And for us, we started Tranquil to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And we still want to be this kind of gold stick, that gold measuring.
The gold standard?
Yeah. So that we can say, this is how you can develop drugs and develop clinical trials and do it the right way and treat people amazingly well in that process. I think that was where we came from. And it started from, we both had this innate yearning to always help people and starting a company that could do that. Because we started simply as a company that kind of deployed clinical trials. Mm-hmm. And then about 5-6 years ago, we opened a research unit where we enroll participants into clinical trials. So we're always evolving our company itself to keep doing this mission of advancing science through people.
How hard, how easy is it to get people to even want to do this?
Hard is the quantifiable measure of hard. It's hell of hard. It is so hard to get people to understand and appreciate that you cannot approve a drug unless it goes through this rigor of science. It requires people to enroll, people to voluntarily participate in clinical trial.
Yeah.
And there are barriers. I think cancer is very different than most other indications because when you have cancer, everybody's in pursuit of treatment. And there's this mission to cure for cancer. COVID was pretty similar, right? Because we didn't have a treatment for COVID unless it went through clinical trial. That when you look at other disease states like arthritis or Alzheimer's, they're emerging, the treatments are emerging, and they only emerge through drug development and kind of this scientific method. And a lot of times we get that someone's not interested because there are other therapies, and we respect that. Convincing people to participate in research is not my job. Giving them the opportunity to participate in research is my job. That's where I think now having a research unit, that's what our goal is to elevate folks who never had the opportunity to clinical trial, to give them that chance.
So you mentioned Alzheimer's, and at the rate that we're going, that's going to, I don't know, I feel like that's going to be top 2 killers sooner rather than later. That's just my guesstimate. I don't know. I could be completely off, and I hope I am. What do you see in terms of clinical trials and there eventually being a cure or some sort of treatment for Alzheimer's that's not going to make it as painful for the patient and their families?
I think, Alzheimer's, it's that emerging science where we're discovering the things that cause it. And we're learning more about the brain and how it works. But trying to stop a process, it's like trying to stop that speeding train that is going 200 miles per hour. That to me is Alzheimer's, right? It's trying to figure out how do you can't stop aging, but what is Alzheimer's and how to treat it. We are currently running a study that is for folks with Alzheimer's that have dementia. And it requires, for someone to participate, I just can't enroll the patient. I have to enroll the care provider. And so that's where Alzheimer's is a tough disease to enroll, because my right to my subject, my participant on studies, to protect their rights. A person who doesn't know what they're doing, how can I consent them to a trial? Am I okay to say, hey, Freddie, I'm going to put your mom in study? She doesn't understand that she's signing to participate on a clinical trial. It's not the right thing to do. I can't do it. And then the study needs measurements and the patients to take drugs at home and to be compliant and to come back and do visits. And we have to do neuro exams and we have to do psychiatric exams and we have to assess their frustrations, their level of frustrations. Someone who can't remember the day or to take their own medications, I can't develop science that way. So Alzheimer's in itself is so difficult because it requires more than just the participant. And to consent someone, it requires someone who can be there, who has the right to give me the opportunity to enroll them on study, a care provider.
That's a whole level of ethics and just human rights that I'd never even considered.
And that's the beauty of clinical trials, because that's where we start. We protect the rights, the safety, and the well-being of our participants.
Right.
If I can't, we just don't begin with that. That's what we continue throughout the course of study. If at any point in time, my subject's rights, the participants' rights, I can't maintain, I take them off study.
Yeah.
If I can't keep them safe, I take them off study. If they're unwell, I take them off study. That's my responsibility to them. So if I can't protect their rights going in, they can't go on study.
Okay, so I want to share something with you.
Please.
I played football from the age of 8 to 18. And
10 years.
10 years. And all the new science and the new research, the studies, the doctors who have really courageously spoken out about CTE, it's kind of sort of got me worried, but not a whole lot worried, because, I only played 10 years, and for the last 2 years, I sat the bench. So I wasn't hitting anybody, and you know what I mean? So there was hardly any contact. But then there was like the whole thing where it was on Diary of a CEO, where the doctor, and I forget her name, she was talking about how it's not so much the hard hits that's causing the CTE. It's the repetitive sort of everyday average normal hits. Not that there's anything normal about just pounding the crap out of yourself. But it's got me concerned. Like, I don't know, in 10 years, I'm 49. In 10 years, am I going to be a vegetable, or am I going to start experiencing some of these things? And so I'm asking you, what if I wanted to partake in some sort of clinical trial before any of this would potentially happen? So let's just say, going in, if I had the crystal ball, if unfortunately I end up with something like this, could I sign my rights away, or sign my consent ahead of time?
You'd need to have a legally authorized representative.
Gotcha.
So that they could consent you to study.
So even before I experience any of those symptoms.
Yep. You assign to your spouse or your daughter the capability to make medical decisions on your behalf.
Gotcha.
So that if that unfortunate thing happens to you, they can consent you to participate on a trial for CTE or post-concussion syndrome or one of those indications. But that's the way it works in medicine to begin with. I think everyone should plan for an inevitability that we may not be able to make a sound decision.
Right.
We need to have someone who, that power of attorney, that legally authorized representative, that loved one that can make the right decision for me when I can't make it. And that's in clinical trials what we would apply. I would need someone to be your legally authorized representative to consent on your behalf.
Because if it's like if I've already told my kids and my wife, I'm like, okay, when I die, my brain is literally going to a lab because I want to see. Like, I want you all to see if I was right or if I was completely just off the rails crazy. So if I could further the advancement of science in terms of Alzheimer's and dementia while I am alive, and sure, I would be incapacitated. I wouldn't have any idea of what's going on, but at least while I'm alive, that there's an option for someone to learn about what Alzheimer's and dementia from a patient that's alive. It seems like a no-brainer to me. No pun intended.
So I think, like in Alzheimer's and dementia, we're seeing this huge emergence of memory care centers.
Yeah.
I can't enroll a patient that's at a memory care center for a couple reasons, because they can't get to a clinical research site.
Oh, yeah.
Those that are at home, I need a care provider. And then those who don't have a legally authorized rep or someone who can consistently do the research assessments that we need to do. So that's the complexity of a study. But so many of our participants, Freddie, when you see them, you won't say they're incapacitated. They just have a level of frustration because of their lack of memory. And that leads to this, what we call the aggravation and these syndromes that follow with Alzheimer's. I think that's the pathway of Alzheimer's is we're seeing a lot of people with early Alzheimer's and dementia that I think if they caught it early and they found those signals and they worked towards a treatment modality early on, they might diminish the long-term effects of what might happen in that disease process.
It's a lot to take in.
That's the beauty of where we're seeing Alzheimer's is there are treatment modalities that are having efficacy and that are effective and being approved by the FDA because in clinical trial, it's demonstrated at least some form of efficacy, some form of this drug works to decrease that agitation. This drug works to decrease the memory loss. This drug works to decrease folks who they refer to as sundowning. When that sun sets, they get so confused, and then a level of anxiety builds and a level of that agitation builds. So there are effective treatments that are supporting Alzheimer's patients right now.
But because of the miracle that is clinical trials, that we're getting these treatments that we're seeing efficacy, and God willing, maybe even a cure later on down the line.
I don't know if anyone's ever said clinical trials are miraculous, but I would agree, right? It's the science that we need to make sure that no drug is going to someone unless it's gone through this process. But to get to cure, this is exactly what we need. We need more clinical trials.
Yeah.
We need more participants in every clinical trial, no matter what setting. One of the biggest hurdles for centers like mine is finding the right patient. We do end stage cancer trials here, where these are folks who have advanced cancers and there aren't any other standard of care options. We have over 9 studies with multiple sponsors, multiple pharmaceutical companies that want to advance cancer through clinical trial. In the phase 1, in the first time in human oncology studies, it's any solid tumor. So if someone has a cancer, say colorectal, and they've gone through the standard of care and there's no other standard, so often the options are, well, they can go on X or Y. The doc thinks this might have some data, or clinical trial. And a lot of times the other option is hospice because there are no other treatments. In the absence of our phase 1 first in human oncology studies, we can't advance cancer drug development. So you take someone courageous who has a cancer, who's probably that cancer is probably going to be why they expire, but they're going to take the courage to participate in a clinical trial,
Right.
so that it gives them hope that this drug might give them some response, extension in life, better quality of life that they have, but also they're benefiting other patients who have cancer in the future. Like, that's one of the benefits. When you look at an informed consent, that's a document that we review. It's a process that we go through with our participant. We're telling Freddie, one of the reasons why you should participate is that you're benefiting humanity.
Yes.
Anyone with your disease state, they're going to benefit because you were courageous enough to go through the process of clinical trial and help advance this disease and this drug to see if it works or not, to see if it's safe or not.
And that's when you start to kind of dive into purpose and why did this happen, and why did this happen to me? It happened for me, and all this sort of a thing. And it goes into a whole other level of,
Yeah, I think everybody has to resolve their own why.
Yeah.
Like, why am I born this way? Why do I have this disease? I think that's really important, understanding the why. But for me, it's moving forward. What can I do about it?
Yeah.
Like being a solution-oriented, and I follow science, right? And I think, and then for me, it's faith. Having a phase 1 oncology unit, for me, it's hope. I tell all of our cancer participants that hope is a switch. And at Tranquil Clinical Research, our clinical trials, we work to keep that switch on because it is hope. It's hope for you and it's hope for humanity, for other cancer patients that we might help them. And in this unit, we produce outcomes that other cancer units in first-in-human, in phase 1, don't produce because we focus on the wellness of our participant, not just on the clinical trial and the process of the clinical trial and make sure we don't deviate from the study. Those things are all important and keeping them safe. But we work towards how do we help someone who is in this end of stage life experience wellness while they develop science with me.
Love it. Karim, I am proud to call you a friend. I love every time we hang out. It's just, it bends my mind what you and Ronnie and your team are doing, and love you like a brother, man.
Thanks, man. It's mutual.
All right. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Freddie.